The Valorian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered 400 worlds. They had crushed species that were building starships when humans were still living in caves. And in all that time, they had never once considered Earth a threat. Empress Zithara, the Eternal, sat on her crystalline throne and looked at the star maps her advisors had brought her. Earth was there, a tiny blue dot in an unimportant corner of the galaxy. The humans who lived there were listed as a primitive species. They fought each other constantly. They destroyed their own planet with pollution. They could not even agree on simple things like borders and governments. "Why do you waste my time with this?" Zithara asked her intelligence minister. Her voice was cold and sharp, like breaking ice. Her pale blue skin glowed softly in the light of the throne room. "The humans are nothing. They have always been nothing." Intelligence minister bowed low. His name was Krelvos, and he had served 3 empresses before Zithara. He knew better than to argue with her. "Forgive me, Empress. Our scout ships detected some unusual energy readings near the human planet. I thought you should know." Zithara waved her hand dismissively. "Energy readings. Probably their primitive nuclear reactors exploding again. They cannot even handle basic power generation without killing themselves." Krelvos nodded and backed away from the throne. He had learned long ago that the Empress only wanted to hear what she already believed. And she believed that humans were weak, foolish creatures who would eventually destroy themselves without any help from the Empire. This belief had been passed down through generations of Valorian rulers. Zithra's mother had believed it. Her grandmother had believed it. For 3,000 years, every Empress had looked at Earth and seen nothing worth conquering. The planet had no rare minerals. The humans had no useful technology. They were simply not worth the effort. But Krelvos had a feeling in his stomach that something was wrong. The energy readings his scouts had detected were unlike anything they had seen before. They were coming from near Jupiter, one of the large planets in the human solar system. And they were getting stronger every year. He decided to send more scouts. Just to be safe, far away on the planet Earth, a secret meeting was taking place. It was happening in a room that did not officially exist, beneath a building that appeared to be an ordinary office tower in Geneva, Switzerland. But this room held the most powerful people on Earth. Admiral Chen Weilin of China sat at the head of the table. Next to her was General Morrison from the United States. Across from them sat Admiral Volkov from Russia, General Santos from Brazil, and military leaders from every major nation on the planet. They had been meeting like this for 60 years. Ever since the first Valorian scout ship had been detected entering Earth's solar system. That scout ship had changed everything. For the first time in human history, every nation had agreed on something. They agreed that they were not alone in the universe. They agreed that whoever was out there was probably dangerous. And they agreed that they needed to prepare. The latest reports showed that the Valorians are sending more scouts, Admiral Chen said. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had dedicated her entire life to this secret project. "They are getting curious about us." General Morrison nodded. He was a large man with broad shoulders and a face that looked like it was carved from stone. "Our intelligence suggests they still see us as primitives. They have no idea what we have built. We must keep it that way," Admiral Volkov added. His voice was deep and rough. "If they discover our fleet before we are ready, they will destroy us." The fleet? That was what they called it. The greatest secret in human history. For 60 years, every nation on Earth had been working together on a single project. They had put aside their differences, their arguments, their ancient hatred for each other. They had focused all their resources on one goal: survival. The Americans had contributed their artificial intelligence systems. Their computers could target enemy ships faster than any human pilot could react. The Chinese had perfected fusion power. Their reactors could generate enough energy to power a small city, all packed into a space the size of a car. The Russians had developed armor that could withstand plasma weapons. The Indians had cracked faster-than-light communication. The Europeans had designed fighter bays that could launch thousands of small ships in minutes. The Brazilians had revolutionized life support systems. The Japanese had created medical technology that could heal wounded soldiers in hours. Instead of weeks, every nation had given something. Every culture had contributed. and together they had built something that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. 200 supercarriers. Each one was 5 kilometers long. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Each one was crewed by the best soldiers, scientists, and engineers from every country on Earth. They were hidden in the darkness near Jupiter, waiting for the day when humanity would need them. Admiral Chen looked around the table at her colleagues. These people had become her family over the years. They had worked together, argued together, and kept this impossible secret together. They had sacrificed everything for a goal they might never see completed. "The Valorians will come eventually," she said. "They always do. They have conquered 400 worlds. They will not ignore us forever. Let them come," General Santos said. She was a young woman with dark hair and fierce eyes. She represented the new generation of military leaders, people who had grown up knowing about the alien threat. "We will be ready for them." Outside the secret room, the world continued as normal. People went to work. Children went to school. Politicians argued about taxes and borders and all the small things that seemed so important. None of them knew what was hiding in the darkness of space. None of them knew that their entire species had been preparing for war. The Valorians continued to watch. Earth with lazy contempt. Their scouts reported that the humans were still fighting each other, still polluting their planet, still acting like the primitive creatures they had always been. The energy readings near Jupiter were probably just some failed experiment. Nothing to worry about. Empress Ithara read these reports and smiled. Soon, she thought, the Empire would formally contact Earth. They would offer the humans a choice: join the Empire as servants or be destroyed. It was the same choice they had given 400 other worlds. And like all those other worlds, the humans would bow. She had no idea how wrong she was. In the cold darkness near Jupiter, the fleet waited. 200 supercarriers floated in perfect silence, their crews running drills and checking systems and preparing for a war that might come tomorrow or might come in 50 years. They were patient. They were ready, and when the time came, they would show the galaxy what humanity could do when it stopped fighting itself and started fighting. Together, the forgotten planet was about to remind the universe that it existed. The Valorian diplomatic ship entered Earth's solar system on a bright morning in March 2247. It was a beautiful vessel, all smooth curves and shining metal, designed to impress primitive species with the glory of the Empire. Ambassador Krelvex stood at the viewing window and watched as Earth grew larger in front of him. He had done this hundreds of times before. He would land on the planet, meet with whatever leaders the primitives had, and explain their options. They could join the Empire peacefully and serve the Empress, or they could resist and be destroyed. Most species chose to serve. The few that resisted were quickly crushed. Krelvex expected the humans to be no different. His briefing files said they were a divided species, constantly fighting among themselves. They had no unified government, no real military power, no technology worth mentioning. This would be an easy mission. Ambassador, his pilot called out. "I am detecting some strange readings ahead." Krelvex frowned. "What kind of readings?" "Large metallic objects. Many of them. Near the planet Jupiter." "Probably mining stations," Krelvex said dismissively. "Primitive species often try to mine resources from nearby planets. It never amounts to anything." As they flew closer, the readings became clearer, and Krelvex felt his blood turn cold. The objects were not mining stations. They were ships. Massive ships, each one larger than anything in the Valorian fleet. And there were hundreds of them. "That is impossible," Krelvex whispered. His hands were shaking. "The humans cannot have ships like that. They are primitives." But the evidence was right in front of his eyes. The ships were real. They were human. And they were pointing their weapons directly at his diplomatic vessel. A voice came through the communication system. It was calm and professional, speaking in perfect Valorian language. "Valorian vessel, this is the United Earth Ship Defiance. Please state your intentions." Krelvex tried to speak, but no words came out. His pilot looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. Neither of them had ever seen anything like this. Neither of them had ever imagined that a primitive species could build such things. Finally, Krelvex found his voice. "This is Ambassador Krelvex of the Valorian Empire. I am here on a diplomatic mission to speak with your leaders." There was a pause. Then the voice returned. "Very well, Ambassador. You will be escorted to our flagship. Please follow the fighters that will guide you." Small ships appeared around the diplomatic vessel. They were fast and sleek, moving with a precision that shocked Krelvex. These were not the clumsy craft of a primitive species. These were advanced military fighters equal to or better than anything the Empire had. The diplomatic ship followed the fighters, the largest of the human vessels. As they approached, Krelvex could see the name painted on the hull in massive letters: U.S. Defiance. The ship was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. It made Valorian warships look small. They landed in a hangar bay that could have held a dozen Valorian cruisers. Soldiers in black uniforms stood at attention, their faces calm and disciplined. Krelvex recognized military professionalism when he saw it. These were not primitives playing with weapons they did not understand. These were trained warriors. A woman stepped forward to greet him. She was small, with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to look right through him. She wore an admiral's uniform covered in medals and insignia from a dozen different nations. "Ambassador Krelvex," she said. Her voice was polite but cold. "I am Admiral Chen Wayland, commander of Earth's United Defense Fleet. Welcome aboard the Defiance." Krelvex tried to recover his composure. He was a diplomat of the Valorian Empire. He had faced hostile species before. He would not let these humans see his fear. "Admiral Chen," he said smoothly, "I must say I am surprised. Our records indicated that Earth was not capable of interstellar technology." Admiral Chen smiled slightly. It was not a friendly smile. "Your records were wrong." She led him through the ship, and with every step, Krelvex felt more afraid. The technology around him was not just advanced. It was revolutionary. He saw weapons systems that combined technologies from multiple species. He saw engines that were more efficient than anything the Empire had developed. He saw medical bays and research labs and training facilities that would make Valorian scientists weep with envy. "How did you do this?" he asked finally. "How did you build all of this without our knowledge?" Admiral Chen stopped walking and turned to face him. "You want to know the truth, Ambassador? You gave us no choice. 60 years ago, we detected your first scout ship entering our solar system. We knew then that we were not alone. We knew that whoever was out there would eventually come for us." She started walking again, and Krelvex hurried to keep up. Every nation on Earth had a choice to make. We could keep fighting each other, keep wasting our resources on old grudges and pointless wars. Or we could work together to survive. We chose survival. They entered a command center filled with holographic displays. Krelvex saw a map of the solar system with 200 green dots clustered near Jupiter. Each dot was a supercarrier. Each supercarrier was a weapon of war unlike anything the galaxy had seen. 200 ships, Admiral Chen said. Built in secret over 6 decades, crewed by the best people from every nation on Earth, armed with the combined technology of our entire species. She turned to look at Krelvex with those sharp, cold eyes. "We know why you are here, Ambassador. You came to offer us a choice between slavery and destruction. But we have a different proposal?" Krelvex swallowed hard. "What proposal?" "Go back to your Empress. Tell her what you have seen. Tell her that Earth is not a primitive backwater to be conquered. We are a united species with a fleet that can defend itself. If the Empire wants peace, we will have peace. If the Empire wants war—" She paused and looked at the map with all its green dots. "We will give them war." Krelvex returned to his ship in a daze. His hands were still shaking as he ordered his pilot to leave the solar system immediately. He did not stop to take more readings or gather more intelligence. He simply fled, desperate to report what he had seen. The journey back to Valoria Prime took 3 weeks. Krelvex spent every moment of that journey dreading what would happen when he delivered his news. The Empress would be furious. She might execute him for bringing such terrible information. But he had no choice. She had to know when he finally stood before the crystalline throne and showed the Empress the recordings from his ship. The throne room fell silent. Advisors and ministers stared at the SD-graphic images of the human fleet with expressions of shock and disbelief. Empress Zavera watched the entire recording without speaking. When it ended, she sat in silence for a long moment. Then she turned to her High Admiral and spoke 3 words that would change the history of the galaxy. Prepare for war. Back on Earth. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked out at the stars. She knew the Valorians would come. She knew they would bring everything they had, and she knew that humanity was ready to meet them. The forgotten planet had finally made itself known. Now the universe would have to deal with the consequences. The crystalline throne room of Valoria Prime had stood for 10,000 years. Its walls were made of a rare mineral that glowed with soft blue light. Its ceiling reached so high that it disappeared into shadow. Statues of ancient empresses lined the walls, their stone eyes watching over their descendants with cold approval. In all those years, the throne room had witnessed many things. It had seen treaties signed and wars declared. It had heard the pleas of conquered species begging for mercy. It had echoed with the laughter of empresses celebrating their victories. But it had never witnessed anything like the rage of Empress Zithara, the Eternal, on the day she learned about Earth's fleet. She screamed so loudly that servants in distant parts of the palace heard her. She swept her arm across a data terminal, sending it crashing to the floor in a shower of sparks. She grabbed a decorative pillar made of pure crystal and shattered it against the wall. 200 ships. She shrieked. Her pale blue skin had turned purple with fury. Her eyes burned with a fire that made her advisors back away in fear. 200 supercarriers. From primitives. From insects. High Admiral Varoth stood his ground, though his hands were trembling. He was the commander of the Imperial fleet, a position he had held for 40 years. He had won battles against a dozen species, but he had never seen the Empress this angry. How did this happen? Zithara demanded. She turned on her intelligence minister Krelvos, who looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. You told me they were primitives. You told me they had no technology? You told me they were nothing. Krelvos fell to his knees. Empress, I can only report what our scouts observed. The humans hid their fleet near Jupiter. They used some kind of technology that blocked our sensors. We had no way of knowing. Zithara grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. She was surprisingly strong for her size. Our empire has conquered 400 worlds. Our technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. And you tell me that a species of primitives fooled us for 60 years? She threw Krelvos across the room. He hit the wall hard and crumpled to the floor, gasping for breath. Zithara turned to face High Admiral Voreth. Her voice was suddenly calm, which was somehow more frightening than her screaming. Tell me about their ships, Admiral. Tell me everything. Voreth swallowed hard and activated a holographic display. The images that Ambassador Krelvex had recorded appeared in the air, showing the massive human vessels in terrifying detail. Each ship is approximately 5 kilometers in length, Voroth said. They appear to be carrying a combination of weapon systems unlike anything we have seen before. Energy weapons, projectile weapons, missile systems, all working together in ways our engineers do not fully understand. He zoomed in on one of the supercarriers. Each vessel also carries what appears to be thousands of smaller craft, fighter ships, probably for close combat and swarming tactics. Zithara raised an eyebrow. Explain. It is a primitive form of warfare, Empress. Instead of engaging in direct combat between large ships, the attacker releases many small ships to overwhelm the enemy through sheer numbers. It is considered inefficient and chaotic. Most advanced species abandoned such tactics thousands of years ago. Zithara nodded slowly. But the humans still use them. It appears so, Empress. Our analysts believe this reflects their violent nature. Humans have been fighting each other for their entire history. They have developed many different types of warfare, including some that we consider barbaric. Barbaric, Zithara repeated. She walked to the window and looked out at her capital city. Billions of Valorians lived below, going about their daily lives, confident that their empire would protect them. They had no idea that a species they had never heard of was threatening everything they knew. "How many ships do we have, Admiral?" she asked quietly. 300 frontline warships, Empress, plus another 500 support vessels and transports, so we outnumber them. In raw numbers? Yes. But our warships are smaller than theirs, and we have no idea what their weapons can do. If we engage them without more intelligence, we could suffer significant losses. Zathara turned to face him. Her eyes were cold and hard. "The Valorian Empire does not retreat, Admiral. We do not hide. We do not wait for our enemies to grow stronger. We attack." Voreth hesitated. "Empress, with respect, perhaps we should attempt diplomacy first. The humans said they would accept peace if we peace." Zathara laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want me to make peace with primitives? You want me to tell the galaxy that the mighty Valorian Empire was afraid of humans?" She walked toward Voreth until she was standing directly in front of him. She was shorter than him, but somehow she seemed to fill the entire room. "If we show weakness now, Admiral, every conquered species will see it. Every world we rule will start to wonder if we can be defeated. Every enemy we have ever made will start to plan against us." She grabbed his chin and forced him to look into her eyes. "The humans must be destroyed. Not just defeated, destroyed. Their fleet must be wiped out. Their planet must be brought to its knees. And every other species in the galaxy must see what happens to those who defy the Empire." Voreth nodded slowly. "I understand, Empress. I will assemble the fleet immediately." Zathara released him and stepped back. "Use everything we have. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. I want the human fleet crushed within the month." As Voreth left to carry out her orders, Zathara returned to her throne and sat down heavily. She was still angry. But beneath the anger was something she had never felt before. Fear. The humans had built 200 supercarriers without anyone noticing. They had developed technology that rivaled or exceeded the Empire's. They had united their entire species in secret, working together for 60 years without a single leak or betrayal. What else were they capable of? Zathara pushed the thought away. It did not matter what the humans could do. The Valorian Empire had conquered 400 worlds. They had crushed species that were far more advanced than humans. They would crush the humans too. But deep in her heart, she knew that this war would be different. She knew that the humans were not like any enemy the Empire had faced before. And she knew that if she lost, her empire would never recover. The throne room fell silent. The statues of ancient empresses stared down at Zathara with their cold stone eyes. They had built the empire. They had defended it for 10,000 years. Now, it was her turn. She would not let them down. She would destroy the humans no matter what it cost. And she would prove to the galaxy that the Valorian Empire was still the most powerful force in existence. The war was coming. And Empress Zathara, the Eternal, intended to win. Across the galaxy, other species watched and waited. They had lived under Valorian rule for generations, accepting their place as servants and subjects. But now something was changing. A primitive species from a forgotten planet had dared to defy the Empire, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. The galaxy held its breath. The Valorian fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system 3 weeks after Empress Zathara gave her orders. 300 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the light of distant stars. They were the pride of the Empire, the greatest military force in the known galaxy, and they had come to destroy humanity. High Admiral Voroth stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, the flagship of the Imperial fleet. Empress Zathara herself had insisted on joining the battle, and she stood beside him, watching the view screen with cold anticipation. She wanted to see the humans die with her own eyes, Report Voroth ordered. "Oblite. The human fleet is holding position near the Oort cloud," his tactical officer replied. 200 supercarriers in defensive formation. "They are not moving toward us." Zathara smiled. "They are afraid. They know they cannot win." Vorith was not so sure. The humans had surprised them once. He did not want to be surprised again. Deploy our ships in standard attack formation. All weapons charged and ready. We will advance slowly and carefully. The Valorian fleet began to move. 300 warships glided through the darkness like sharks swimming toward prey. Their formation was perfect, the result of 3,000 years of military tradition. Every captain knew their position. Every gunner knew their target. They had done this hundreds of times before, on the other side of the battlefield. Admiral Chen Weilin watched the approaching enemy on her holographic display. She was calm, almost relaxed. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Admiral, her tactical officer, reported, "The Valorians are advancing in standard Imperial formation. 300 ships, arranged in classic attack pattern." Chen nodded. "Just as we expected. They are fighting the way they have always fought, the way they have always won." She turned to face her command staff. These were the best officers from every nation on Earth. American, Chinese, Russian, Indian, Brazilian, European, African, and more. They had trained together for years, learning to work as one team. They trusted each other completely. "The Valorians have conquered 400 worlds using the same tactics," Chen said. "They expect us to fight like all those other species. Defensive formations, direct engagements, honorable battle." She smiled slightly. "We are not going to do any of those things." She pressed a button on her command console. All carriers launched the swarm. Across the human fleet, bay doors opened and fighters poured into space. Each supercarrier released 5,000 small craft in less than 2 minutes. 1,000,000 fighters flooded the battlefield, forming a cloud of metal and weapons that filled the space between the two fleets. On the Eternal Dominion, Vorith stared at the view screen in disbelief. "What are they doing? Those fighters cannot harm our warships." "They are not supposed to harm our warships," Zathera said slowly. Her voice had lost its confidence. "They are supposed to confuse us." She was right. The 1,000,000 fighters did not attack the Valorian ships directly. Instead, they swarmed around them, dodging and weaving, creating chaos in every direction. The Valorian targeting systems, designed for ship-to-ship combat, could not track so many small targets. Gunners fired wildly, hitting nothing. "Admiral," the tactical officer shouted, "our formation is breaking apart. The fighters are disrupting our coordination." Vorith tried to give orders, but everything was happening too fast. His ships were turning to chase fighters that disappeared before they could be hit. His captains were screaming for instructions. His perfectly disciplined fleet was dissolving into confusion. And then the human supercarriers attacked. While the fighters created chaos, the 200 massive ships had been moving into position. Now they fired their main weapons in coordinated volleys, targeting the Valorian vessels that had broken formation. The effect was devastating. Energy beams cut through Valorian armor like it was paper. Missiles exploded against holes that had never been breached before. Projectile weapons punched holes in engine compartments and weapon systems. In the first 5 minutes of real combat, 20 Valorian ships were destroyed. Vorith shouted, "Regroup. Maintain formation." But his orders could not be heard over the chaos. Ships were burning. Crews were dying. The fighters were everywhere, like angry insects attacking a wounded animal. Every time a Valorian ship turned to face one threat, another threat appeared behind it. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold on her display. Her face showed no emotion, but inside she felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She was winning, but every explosion on both sides meant lives lost. She had hoped it would not come to this. But the Valorians had given humanity no choice. "Press the attack," she ordered. "Target their command ships." The human fleet focused its fire on the largest Valorian vessels. These were the ships that coordinated the Imperial fleet, that gave orders and maintained discipline. One by one, they began to fall. Empress Zathera watched in horror as her invincible fleet crumbled. This was not supposed to happen. The Valorian Empire had conquered 400 worlds. They had never lost a major battle. They were the most powerful force in the galaxy. "We have to retreat," Vorath said. His voice was hoarse with desperation. "Empress, if we stay, we will lose everything," Zathara whispered. "We cannot retreat. If we retreat, the Empire is finished. If we stay, we will die." Vorath grabbed her arm, something no one had ever dared to do before. "Empress, please. We must save what we can." Zathara looked at the view screen. Another Valorian ship exploded in a ball of fire, and another, and another. The humans were not just winning, they were destroying her fleet. She thought about her ancestors. All those Empresses who had built and defended the Empire for 10,000 years. She thought about the billions of Valorians who depended on her to keep them safe. She thought about everything she had been taught, about honor and glory and never surrendering. And then she gave the order that no Valorian Empress had ever given before. "All ships retreat. Full speed. Get us out of here." The remaining Valorian vessels turned and fled. The human fighters chased them to the edge of the solar system, picking off stragglers. But most of the Imperial fleet managed to escape into faster-than-light travel. The battle had lasted 6 hours. 147 Valorian ships had been destroyed or disabled. The humans had lost 32 supercarriers and almost 200,000 fighters. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked at the wreckage floating in space. 32 carriers meant thousands of human lives lost. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. People who had given everything to defend their planet. She bowed her head in a moment of silence. Then she straightened her shoulders and turned to her command staff. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Tell them we won. The Valorians have retreated." A cheer went up on the bridge, but Chen did not join it. She knew that this was not the end. The Empress would be back. She would bring more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. The war had only just begun. But for now, for this one moment, humanity had done something that no other species in the galaxy had ever done. They had defeated the Valorian Empire, and across the galaxy, on every conquered world and every oppressed planet, people heard the news and began to hope. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. On 1,000 worlds, people whispered about what had happened at the edge of Earth's solar system. A primitive species had defeated the Valorian Empire. The invincible had been beaten. The unthinkable had occurred. On Valoria Prime, the streets were silent. People stayed in their homes, afraid to speak about what they had heard. The Empress had returned from battle with less than half her fleet. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Empire had retreated. Empress Zathara sat alone in her throne room. The statues of her ancestors stared down at her with what she imagined was disappointment. She had failed them. She had failed her people. She had failed the Empire. High Admiral Vorath entered the chamber slowly, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He looked old, far older than he had before the battle. The defeat had broken something inside him. "Empress," he said quietly, "the other species are talking. The Krell Dominion has refused to pay their tribute. The Symphony Collective is demanding independence. There are reports of resistance movements forming on 12 worlds." Zathara did not respond. She continued to stare at the floor, lost in her own thoughts. Empress Vorath tried again. "We must do something. If we do not act, the Empire will fall apart." Finally, Zathara looked up. Her face was pale, and her eyes were empty. "What would you have me do, Admiral? Attack the humans again? We lost half our fleet. If we attack again and lose, we will have nothing left." "Perhaps diplomacy," Vorath suggested. "The humans offered peace before the battle. Perhaps they will offer it again. Peace." Zathara laughed bitterly. "You want me to beg primitives for peace? You want me to admit to the galaxy that the Valorian Empire was defeated by insects? I want us to survive, Empress. Whatever that requires." Zathara stood and walked to the window. Her capital city stretched out below her, beautiful and peaceful. Her people had built this civilization over 10,000 years. They had conquered the galaxy and brought order to chaos. And now, it was all slipping away because of one small blue planet that she had ignored for too long. Contact the humans, she said finally. Tell them we are willing to talk. Far away on Earth, the celebrations had ended. Admiral Chen Weyland stood before the United Nations General Assembly, addressing the leaders of every nation on the planet. The room was packed with people who had never known about the secret fleet until a few weeks ago. Now they knew everything. We won a battle, Chen told them. We did not win a war. The Valorians will return. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But they will come back. They cannot allow a primitive species to defeat them and survive. Their entire empire depends on other species believing they are invincible. We prove they are not. She paused and looked around the room. For 60 years we worked together in secret. Every nation contributed to the fleet. Every culture gave something. We put aside our differences because we had to. Because survival demanded it. She took a deep breath. I am asking you to continue that unity. Not in secret this time, but openly. The threat is not gone. It may never be gone. But if we stand together, if we fight together, we have a chance. The assembly was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, the leaders began to applaud. It started slowly, but soon the entire room was on its feet, cheering and clapping. For the first time in human history, the entire species was truly united. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. Ships began arriving in Earth's solar system, but not from the Valorian Empire. They came from other worlds, other species that had lived under Valorian rule for generations. The first to arrive were the Krell, a reptilian species that had been conquered 500 years ago. Their ambassador knelt before Admiral Chen and offered the loyalty of his entire civilization. You have done what we could not, he said. You have shown us that the Empire can be defeated. We want to stand with you. Next came the Symphony, a species of tall, thin beings with silver skin. They brought technology and knowledge that humans had never seen before. We have waited 1,000 years for this moment, their leader said. For a chance to be free, more species followed. Some had been conquered recently. Others had been under Valorian rule for millennia. But all of them had one thing in common. They had seen what humanity had done, and they wanted to be part of it. Earth became the center of a new alliance. Ships from dozens of worlds gathered near Jupiter, where the human fleet had once hidden alone. Scientists shared knowledge. Engineers worked together to build new weapons and defenses. Soldiers trained side by side, learning from each other. Admiral Chen watched this miracle unfold and felt something she had not felt in years: hope. But she knew the war was not over. Empress Zithra was still out there, still dangerous, still determined to preserve her empire. The Valorians had lost one battle, but they still controlled hundreds of worlds. They still had resources and technology that the new alliance could not match. One day, Chen received a message from Valoria Prime. It was from Empress Zithara herself. Requesting a meeting to discuss peace, Chen agreed to meet on a neutral space station at the border between human and Valorian space. She brought a small escort, knowing that this could be a trap. But she also knew that peace, if it was real, was worth the risk. The two leaders faced each other across a negotiating table. Zithara looked different than Chen had expected. She was smaller, more fragile, with eyes that showed exhaustion and pain. The battle had cost her more than ships. You have changed everything, Zithara said quietly. My empire is crumbling. Species that served us for 1,000 years are now rebelling. My own people are losing faith. You have done more damage to us in 6 months than any enemy in 3,000 years. Chen nodded. We did not want this war. We only wanted to be left alone, I know. Zithara looked down at her hands. I underestimated you. I thought you were primitives, too divided and weak to be a threat. I was wrong. She looked up and met Chen's eyes. I am offering you peace. Real peace, not the kind we offered before. The Valorian Empire will recognize Earth and its allies as equals. We will withdraw from any world that wishes to be free. We will share technology and trade fairly. Chen studied the Empress carefully. Why? Why offer this now? Because I have no choice. As Thraz's voice was bitter but honest. Because if I continue this war, I will lose everything. My empire, my people, Everything my ancestors built? You have one, Admiral. Accept your victory, and let us both move forward. Chen thought for a long moment. Part of her wanted to refuse to punish the Valorians for all the species they had conquered, all the lives they had destroyed, but another part of her knew that peace was the better choice. More war would only mean more death, more destruction, more suffering. We accept, she said finally. But know this. If you break this peace, if you threaten Earth or any of our allies, we will finish what we started. The next time, there will be no negotiation. Zathara nodded slowly. I understand. They signed the treaty that day. It was not perfect, and many questions remained unanswered. But it was a beginning. When Chen returned to Earth, she was greeted as a hero. People celebrated in the streets, dancing and singing and crying with joy. The war was over. They had won, but Chen did not celebrate. She went to a quiet memorial that had been built for all those who had died in the battle. 32 supercarriers, almost 200,000 fighters, thousands upon thousands of human lives. She stood before the memorial and bowed her head. These people had given everything so that humanity could survive. They deserved to be remembered. Far away on Valoria Prime, Empress Azera stood at her window and looked up at the stars. Her empire was smaller now, but it still existed. Her people were shaken, but they would recover. And somewhere out there, among those countless stars, was a small blue planet that had changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same again.